In today's fast-paced real estate landscape, success demands more than surface-level expertise. It requires insight, adaptability, proven strategies, discipline, and the ability to take risk. The Agent Brew podcast blends candid conversations with wisdom from industry leaders who've walked the path before you. Think of us as your strategic pit stop to fuel your real estate journey. From the crossroads of the world, in the heart of Times Square, welcome to Agent Brew Executive Sessions. I'm your host, Eric Zollinger of Realty Co. Hello to our viewers and listeners. Thank you for joining us for a very first on Agent Brew. It is our very first in-person interview during Executive Sessions, which is a casual conversation with leaders in our industry that share insights, strategy, and also discuss challenges facing the industry today. And I'm so honored and privileged to have today's guest, who is Julia Spillman, the CEO of the Eklund Gomes Team, the largest and the most successful mega team in the United States and part of Douglas Elliman Real Estate. Welcome, Julia.
Thanks, Eric. So nice to be with you here in person.
It is, and it's a first for us. So please allow us a few little, if there's things that go wrong with the sound or this or that, we're trying 2 cameras also. So thank you for being the guinea pig, but
Of course. I mean, I feel like it's only fitting with, speaking of crossroads, all the many crossroads that you and I have that kind of brought us together in the real estate space.
honestly, it's really true. And, I always end every episode with a positive quote, but I'm going to start today's episode. You're not aware of this, but with one of my favorite quotes and something that I've learned tremendously. And you've been a part of my life for many years, but especially the last 5. This is from Maya Angelou, and it says, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." And I have to say, Julia, you are one of the most authentic, one of the best. You are a boss, and you have always shown yourself. You've always been so kind to me, and always, whether it be from the early days at one seaport to Susie, sharing Susie, and then your CEO, which is obviously such an amazing person. I'm just so glad that she was able to really go on from me and then just elevate and go to the stars with you guys. And
Well, it was amazing to have, for you guys at home, Eric and I have known each other for many, many years. But like I said, a lot of crossroads in the sense of we share a same mentor, and, 2 of the more important people in our lives are, those same individuals, our COO for a company who's right now on maternity leave. It's the 1-month countdown to her return, and we're all healing it, but actually started her real estate career with you and then was lucky enough to cross paths with us. And, the rest is history. So I think we've been mentored great. And then I think we've had some amazing, mentees.
yes, exactly. And I always say real estate is kind of the byproduct of what we do. It's all about relationships. So when you find the people, and Susie was really that first person in my life that I didn't have to think about the day-to-day, that I could literally think about strategy, and it really made me a better entrepreneur because it was the right staff in person. And so, this is a perfect segue. I always like to start with people talking about their elevator pitch. So please share with our audience who you are today, what is your business, and then we'll go back to your origin story.
Oh gosh, we got a great origin story. So I'm Julia Spillman. I'm the CEO of the Eklund Gomes Team at Douglas Elliman. I always like to give a good real deal quote because I know we're all reading that nonstop every day, but I was lucky enough to kind of be, named the mastermind, as I always get a good chuckle, the mastermind between the expansion of the Eklund Gomes Team, essentially the architect behind the going from the #1 New York team to going to the #1 mega team in the country. So I've been very, very fortunate to work with some of the best people in the business. And I think to have a lot of doors opened for me that I was able to, most importantly, continue to open for others.
That's great. And I have to say, I was at Elliman almost during your first whole 10 years, with the exception of the last few. And I saw firsthand how you handled the expansion, especially through Texas with Austin and Dallas.
We had a lot of fun.
A lot of fun, but just it's so fun to watch a pro at work and the way that you support your team. And it hasn't officially been announced yet, but Douglas Elliman and Realty Co. have signed on a partnership literally just this week.
Oh, amazing.
So I will see you at Endeavor.
Okay.
We're still working in Vegas. We haven't quite worked out the whole sponsorship thing yet, but just know that it's coming. And I'm so excited to be able to support and empower agents like you and your teams. First off, Realty Co. is very grateful for Eklund Gomes and primarily you and Susie, because you allowed us and allowed me to give my first presentation back in December. It was a learning curve, let's just say that. But you guys really helped support and really allowed me to craft how we move forward. Yes, it was on a Monday at noon. I had just traveled from Hawaii, Maui, and jet lagged, and I got our presentation. It was like nothing but you know what? It was so wonderful because you guys were able to really teach me that, oh, it's not necessarily what's happening at the presentation, because people aren't necessarily going to remember. Yep. It's 3 weeks later when something happens, like health insurance, like with Pietro.
It's the subconscious self.
And so literally it makes me so excited and happy because 2 of your agents were able to get our solo healthcare, like that had been at a substantial savings or at a time when there was no other options. Mm-hmm. We were able to come through and really deliver. So,
well, I think like this business is so much about relationships. And, you know, I look at all of, again, like the doors that have been opened for me, the doors I've been able to open, it's about building the relationship. And people always have, you know, I have all these amazing like young people that always want to meet with me and stuff. And I try to take as many as possible, but I always say, they say, but what did you do right? And I always say, I was curious. And I wanted to know, you know, I remember, you know, in the early days when like you guys came over from Related and it was like, okay, who are these guys, Brooks? Like, what are they doing? It was so like, I was genuinely like curious. And I think like some of the best advice is like, ask people what they're doing, get them to talk about themselves, and find a way that you can work with them without asking what's in it for me. Because every time I've done something, it has paid 10 times more the amount of money than I would have signed it. You know, and I think that's a hard thing because of course, like you're kind of throwing yourself out there and sometimes it works out. You know, example, like One Seaport.
Well, I was just about to say, so how you and Susie came together and your first Eklund Gomes project, you know, as an entrepreneur, it can't always be about what am I getting paid today? It's about laying the groundwork and
for the future.
I think of you guys all the time when, you know, you never got paid for that project at all. Not
one product purse. I'd have as a holiday gift, and I always joke that I ended up selling it on the Real so that I could say that I made at least $1 on the project. And people, when they hear the story of One Seaport, you know, it broke every sales record. It was everything at full ass. The absorption and the velocity were out of control for it ultimately never to happen. And then, I mean, I sold that building 3 times.
Right.
But people are like, oh my gosh, are you not devastated? But it was my audition tape to become the CEO of the biggest organization in the country. So I would have, in hindsight, paid for that opportunity.
Right.
And I think most people, especially like younger agents, are always trying to figure out like the cost of each commission. And it's like, you can't think of that. You've got to figure out like, what is the opportunity on the other side? And I think once you start to switch the script and really think of it long-term versus short-term, all the rest will fill in the gap. But it's really a mindset at the end of the day. But you know, most importantly, I think you got to find people that you have a lot of fun learning from. And of course, you and I share a common mentor.
Yes, that's a great segue. Let's talk about Horatio, or as you famously call him, H.
You know, I think we were both so fortunate to kind of have this combination of, you know, a mentor, big brother, but someone who, like you and I are both sweethearts, but we're also very big personalities going a lot of different directions. And I give, you know, him a lot of respect for his patience with us in different ways. But also too, like his ability to guide us in a way that, like you said earlier, is very authentic to us and let us shine in very, very different ways. I have a lot of respect for that.
knowing that this was coming up and looking at an outline and how do we discuss different topics. And so I was thinking back to the quote that I mentioned earlier with Maya Angelou: people will always show you who they are and believe them the first time. Horatio is, he annoyed me and frustrated me so much early on. He is somebody that has always been there for me when I needed him the most, or just needed him, and just been that voice of reason and that big brother.
Right.
And
Voice of reason.
I really wish I would have had some sort of recording of our conversations early on, because he's taught me so much. And one of the greatest lessons he always said is like, why do you worry about that last 10%? Just don't kill yourself over that last 10%. Just keep striving, keep moving forward. And because I have a tendency to get stuck on that. And also just so many other great life lessons and whatnot. I wish I would have held all of those lessons to
drop in.
You do.
And I think I do think having a mentor or, several mentors in the business is really smart. And it's interesting because when I say that, Horatio Ladon was my mentor at Douglas Elliman, they're like, oh, I didn't realize that you worked in the development division. I said, it didn't. And I think that, I really sought out your guys' division because it was where I wanted to be and it's what I wanted to learn and the way that the business was structured. So it was a way to have access and really learn. And people are like, well, how does that happen? And again, it goes back to curiosity and asking. And it's like, we're all looking to tell our story in our own way. So it's like, and I think most importantly, we've all had someone look out for us and open doors, as I always say. And we're so eager to repay that to the right individuals. So, that's just one thing that I just wish like the younger generation would kind of almost put themselves out there a little bit more, because I think we're there waiting to like receive them and help the next generation. It's like we're only as good as really our weakest link at Eklund Gomes. I was just at lunch with, of course, we're celebrating Susie's return in 30 days, in case I didn't mention counting. But I took out, my team or Susie and I's team, and, they were all talking about like turning 30 and this and that, and their youth, it's contagious and it makes us better. And one of the greatest things that I always say about Fred is each year, instead of being like, okay, we're going to write a new business plan, which of course we do and we set our goals, but he pushes more on how are we personally going to come better? Because I think one of the hard things when you're at the top is how do you get better?
How do you reinvent yourself and keep achieving?
If you're running a 20-minute mile, it's easy to shave it off. But if you're running a 7-8 minute mile at a marathon, how do you get that time down? So we've really realized that we as individuals, as humans, have to make each other better. And that's been such like a fun journey to go with them. And obviously it's such like a bonding, almost like, emotional, vulnerable place to be like, okay, I as a human need to get better and us as partners need to make the business better. So it's just keep pushing. But the younger generation like feeds so many like great ideas and their marketing and just like, again, like their energy, I think really keeps us young.
Right.
So
Agreed.
I think it's that misconception of like, oh, someone at that like higher level, especially in the C-suite, why would they have interest in me? And it's completely incorrect.
Would you say it's also just about mindset? Because I know I'm somewhat older than you, not somewhat, a decade older than you, but I think it goes no matter what age. It's keeping that curiosity. And so one of the things I've just always been so in awe of you and inspired by you, because I've listened to all your podcasts that you go on. But I recall going down to Texas back in 2020, and you were on Aaron Keith's because he was a previous coach of yours.
Yeah.
And so the time blocking is something that I use to this day that really changed how I look at my day to day.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect lead into, okay, here's my day to day. I woke up at 4:30.
Okay.
I got in the car immediately there with enough luggage to last for the next 3 weeks, and flew to New York. So 6 a.m. Miami to New York, landed immediately, was on the phone from there. So my team helps, schedule Zooms all the way in. So everything is super efficient. Get to the office, meetings, lunch here. I actually had a meeting in the car, an interview on the way here. I'm here. Then I have something immediately after that. Then I go to the airport and fly out this evening to meet Frederick in Italy. And I think that you can't do that by chance.
Right.
Like my whole day is like, there is a reminder for reminder. I have notes in there about packages and Amazon pickups and deliveries and dry cleaning, every single concept of my life, the framework I've put there. So it's almost like a checks and balance systems for if you wake up and you're reacting, you're already so behind. And of course, in our business, you have to react all day. So if you're already behind the 8 ball, then you're reacting. By the end of the day, there's actually no way for you to even catch up, much less become proactive. So the whole concept with our organization, and Susie and I, when we started to build the back end of it, all of our rooms would say proactive, not reactive. You're for sure going to have to be reactive, but nobody's thinking about the business in a proactive way. But if you get up and you're already ahead of schedule, the day's so much easier. And I think about agents that get so frazzled with stuff because now one phone call led to them being late here that it's just like a spitball effect that you can't ever win. And I think it starts with mindset, it starts with time blocking, and it starts with being proactive. And I know people are like, oh, well, that's easy for you to say because like you have to, but I set those wheels in motion long before I ever had a big business, long before I was even with John and Fred. I set it as a framework of, if you think of agents and you do the stuff now, it's like second nature to me. I don't even, half of my friends were like, you're completely insane for this day. I'm like, this is a normal day for me.
But you've also conditioned yourself and your body and everything else. It doesn't happen overnight.
No.
And
it's
so
discipline. I always say, I think my superpower, again, is, I'm a girl from Kentucky. I grew up in a town with, like 2 caution lights. I think now I always get corrected because I said we didn't have any. So now we have 2 caution lights in 5 towns, an entire county with 2 caution lights. I grew up for really, really, humble beginnings. So I don't have a fancy education. You guys will probably hear some grammatical errors. I always say cells or spelling. I hope you're going to pick, cells because I'm not so great at the spelling part of it. But I think it's also too, like, I knew what I had to work with. I knew what my strengths were and I knew what my weaknesses. So instead of, obviously always double down on your strengths, but I wanted to really figure out how to get around some of my weaknesses. And I knew that, again, I didn't have the fancy education. I didn't have the Rolex of that, but I could outwork anyone. And I still, to this day, as the CEO at the level we're at, will still outwork anyone. I was talking to a friend when I landed and he was like, you're an actual animal. I was like, no, because there's going to be someone that's going to be able to outwork me. Again, there's always going to be someone smarter, prettier, all the things of that, but you can control how much the intensity of the quality of work that you do. And I think that is discipline, multitasking, which all starts in the fundamentals of time blocking.
I have to say, going and working with you and the whole team in Texas was so much fun and really great because while that project never got off the ground, it still was really great to see you all in action because I'd never officially done a project with any of you. It was always like, oh,
in the similar space.
Right. And adjacent.
Yeah.
But it was just so great to see true professionals at work. And it was invigorating because it's like, yeah, these are people that are like you, a great work ethic, and coming from the Midwest, being Indiana, it's just, that is our secret weapon, is that we can work harder than anybody else, but yet understand and be humble enough that if there's something that goes wrong, oh, no, but we can,
there's not a lot of ego involved. And I think also too, you've got to look at each market as an opportunity zone. And I think Texas is a great example of that. Went down there and realized, okay, strengths and weaknesses. And okay, they really could use some New York minded talent in the sense of kind of elevating the pace, but also to like helping elevate the design. And I think as long as you lead with the strengths, I think that everything, like you can always find a place, because I know is like every city we go into, it's the same story. Well, that's not going to work here because like in this little town, none of these are little towns, but in this little town, like this community does real estate this way. Like real estate is real estate. Marketing is marketing. Content is content. And yes, you've got to do some kind of like tweaks to it. But at the end of the day, like we know how to sell real estate. And most importantly, if we look at who this buyer is, especially in the higher end, it's the same buyer. So it's not like all of a sudden, like, yes, maybe I wear a little bit of different outfit to Austin versus Miami versus LA. But at the end of the day, we're still working with the same framework. It's not, and I think people get confused a little in the sense of like, oh, that's not going to work here. Well, who's your buyer? You're trying to attract New Yorkers. You're trying to attract LA. So we know who the buyer is and we know what the buyer wants. And it's really about taking that and like really focusing and funneling that into a product that speaks across the platform to all buyers. And, I think Texas, again, was really fun because we had a great team that had a lot of fun together. Because I think sometimes, and I always joke, sometimes people in stressful situations, I'll make a joke and they kind of look at me and I'm like, well, you can laugh or you cry. I gotta laugh. I'm not that great on being vulnerable, so you're probably not going to see me cry. But, I think that one of the many things that John and Fred kind of bring into the equation is exactly that. Or, if it's a super heated meeting, and a lot of times, unfortunately, I'm still the only woman in a lot of rooms, I'm going to throw a y'all out. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, what to say? And I think like we found a way to really have fun with it. Obviously, you said, there's nobody more professional, but at the same time, like we're definitely in on joke. And I think that it's really about finding an authentic voice and leaning into it and like surrounding yourself with really, really great people. And I think that's one of the things that I do really love about Douglas Elliman is a lot of us grew up together in the business and we've cheered each other on. We've been friends long before, long before I even sold anything that was over $2 million. It's a lot of the same people. And I think we've all been in each other's corners. And now that we're, I always joke sometimes, like I struggle because I still think of myself as kid sister to all of you guys. And for me, I'm like, I'm kid sister. I'm along for the ride. And then I'm like, oh, wait a second. Like I'm driving the car now. But I think there's still something very sweet. Like I was with Corey Weiss, who of course is one of my dear friends. And it was so funny because I was like, I almost like go back to being like 29-year-old Julia Douglas Elliman. And it's almost like this weird like safe space in the sense of there's so much like memories in growing up, in this business and kind of like the amazing people that I've been so fortunate to be surrounded by, you being one of them.
Well, so let's talk about your wins over your career. Okay. Are there two that stand out to you and why?
I think the national model working, it may look like, I had a crystal ball and like predicted COVID, which I'm just going to say that maybe I did. Maybe that's my superpower. But I think the fact that, I think people looked at us as a bit crazy. Now, in hindsight, we actually were. If we knew what we were up against, time, money, licensings, all the things, if we really knew what was going to go into this national expansion, we would have been like, we're great in New York. We're never going to complain. But I think that I'm really proud that it worked. I take it very personal when agents leave because I kind of feel like, I don't have kids. They're like my children in a weird way. And when they leave, you're obviously proud. But at the same time, you're sad because you've put so much time into it. And
an investment, too.
A total investment on both parts. And I think we did lose some really important to me agents during the expansion. And I got it because they were like, look, you guys are in LA, you're on a plane every day, you've got all these other offices you're trying to get up and operational. I feel like, I'm not, seen as much. And, I don't know if this is going to work. And it's interesting because almost all of them have returned.
Really? I was just about to say, so is this a transformational loss, or we can always talk about that later on too, but
Lot return, and they said to us, which again made me so proud because it was like, oh my gosh, what we were building worked.
right.
Because it could have also totally not worked. And I think that to me was a huge win because it was validation that what we were building ultimately for the agents and for this kind of interesting hybrid brokerage model really did work. And they saw the value and that their business were growing because of it. So that was a big, big, big win. And I also think for me as a woman, especially again, coming from like the middle of literal nowhere, I think I would say my girls, watching Susie grow from contract to admin to our COO and being, legitimately, I mean, like I'm doing part of her job and I'm just like, she's so brilliant. She's so confident. She's also so humble. She's so beautiful. She's a great mother. She's an amazing wife. She's a wonderful person. And I think for me, I'm really proud that I was able to like open those doors. And I think also too, there are these like big, beautiful friendships that if you would have told me running Eklund Gomes, I would have got the perks of, almost 100 of the most amazing people in the industry. I would have never really understood that until now being on the other side. So I think being able to help so many amazing women grow and blossom and, have these big jobs with us and be so well loved and received in the industry is probably ultimately my biggest win.
Well, I mean, we had a conversation about 5 years ago when I was in Texas, and I was just amazed at how you were growing so many different markets at the same time, and and just how are you doing this? Because in Texas it was like a startup, right? So they're trying to grow the general brokerage at the same time, and I'm just trying to remember, oh, how was it in New York? And I had my own brokerage for 3 years, and just looking at you guys in awe, and you had said to me, well, I don't have to worry about the riffraff. Like you attract attract, right? So you're only attracting the creme a la creme, right? And so otherwise there's no reason for them to be part of your great team.
It's like an interesting mix. We're creating the next generation of John and Fred's.
Yeah.
Is the way I look at it. And I had an interesting interview this morning, and it's like I'm always weird because again, we get like 100 emails a day from people that want to meet or haven't got a license yet, but they would be perfect with us or something. But there's always ones that pop out to me. And I had this great interview today, and hopefully, we'll bring him over in the next few weeks. And he sent me an Excel sheet, and he's like, he had obviously done his homework, and he's like, I know you love numbers, and I know how important growth is to you. And he pretty much showed his growth trajectory on his own, and then how he thinks that he could grow with us. And I was like, this I love.
Yeah.
This is someone where, again, do either you or I know his names or many of the other agents in town know it, but do I think people are going to know his name very soon?
Listen,
and
there was a time that nobody knew us, right? And then it was the hard work. It was doing the hard work, but also realizing, oh, this is what the industry needs, or this is how I can really be that differentiator. And this is really great to hear that you're always attracting new talent.
Well, if you look at everybody, I mean, there's really, I mean, myself included. I mean, I remember coming over to run new development for John and Fred in New York. I had only done condo conversions, of course, and then Seaport, and I had never sold anything over $7 million. And I was like, oh boy. So all these podcasts always want me to comment on fake it till you make it. I was like, hi, have we met? And luckily I didn't have to do much faking because like I had the experience of them, but more importantly, I was challenged to step into shoes that at that time were way too big for me and really was given the tools and the empowerment and love to fill them. And I think it's the mindset of how you think of things. I could go in and be like, oh my gosh, I have to be like pretty much like a fraud to make this, or I could figure out how to catch up in as fast a time as humanly possible. And, I also give a lot of respect to John and Fred because I remember they're so great on the content. That's not my thing. I had to be a bit more behind the scenes, but I remember early on with them, the photo shoots, and they would want almost had like an opinion on what I wore, which at first I was kind of like, right, I know you guys are gay, but like we're really gonna now like be involved in like wardrobe. But then I realized like just how brilliant they are. And they wanted, like they loved when I would wear, I wear a lot of shoulder pads, as we all know from my setup. But that was really important to them because they were like, optically, you need to be an equal of ours. And now I am. And I think, again, it goes back to manifesting and mindset and stepping into those shoes that were way too big for me at that time. And then not faking it to make it, but more in the sense of like filling in that gap to actually be that person that, and again, I give Horatio a lot of credit. They saw me for what I could be long before I could. And I think they really pushed and helped craft ways for me to get to the other side as fast as humanly possible. And those photos, I look back at so many of the old early photos, and it really is like, I've got these big shoulder pads on. And when you look at it, it's like, here's Fred's space, here's my space, and here's John, and they're equal. So for two men to be thinking about that and that be so important, really still to this day is so touching.
Tony Robbins says, where your focus goes, your energy flows. And mindset, it all plays into that. It's so important. So you've talked about the wins. Is there a transformational loss other than losing team members that then became a win? Is there anything that stands out that
losing your mind and and I've been a little more public throughout the couple of years, but during the expansion, I was pretty sick. I had a really hard time with a pretty rough autoimmune. But I was also still very young, age-wise and experience-wise, where I thought that if I was public with it, people would almost like count me out. So we hit it. And we like really hit it. And I remember at the start of, really the start of COVID, I was so sick. I was sleeping 16 to 18 hours a day. Nobody had any clue. Now, John and Fred, again, and Susie obviously knew. Fred even found my doctor who put me in remission. And they were so amazing. But it's hard to really put yourself fully out there. I'm not a vulnerable person by nature. So it was kind of this thing of like, okay, what's the turning point of me putting this out there, because I need to be more real. It's like, right. Again, you guys are seeing me. I was up at 4:30 this morning, so you're getting a little bit more real read on versus like full hair and makeup. But I think that that's what's hard with this business is like, who are these people really, and then also too, what are they really going through?
But I was with you during this time, and I had no clue either. Like we were in Texas, we were launching Austin and Dallas at the same time, and I was with you at flying into Dallas even before I started. And I had no idea. I'm like, there's Julia, she's looking so awesome, and now like now as you say the time period, I'm like, oh, I'm remembering back to those things. Oh, she's not drinking there, she's not doing, and I'm like, oh, now it makes total sense.
Very strategic. Now people laugh. I've never been a big drinker,
right?
But I am like the queen of like, I will get a glass and it will stay with me for 6 hours and never be finished.
Well, there was the time in Dallas where they ordered tequila shots for everybody. I hadn't drank for 3 weeks because I was like trying not to, and like, no, I'm going to be good. And then here I am downing it because I thought that's what I was supposed to do in Texas. And you were so professional. It just stayed there like, oh yeah, hi. And then it just went right back down to the table. And so it's little things that
we learned a lot of tricks. And I think also too, because I think, again, a lot of people look at my social and Instagram and stuff and just think like, oh, it's like photo shoots and this, that, whatever. No, it's usually 4:30 a.m. mornings and flying. And, this week, I think I'm 2 flights. Last week I was 3 flights. That's the hard reality, is it's not reality. And right. I think that, again, it all goes back to working harder and the discipline and the structure of things, because now it is really easy to do, again, a day like today. Or for example, a lot of times when I do hair and makeup, I'll do it on a Zoom call, so it's like, how do you get everything done? Because there's a lot of things that you can change, but the 24 hours in the day, we can't manipulate.
Right.
So, and I am a big sleeper. I always get my 8 hours. Nobody wants me to match. But, I think that time was really difficult, because then once I got to the other side, I became more vocal about it because I don't think, again, talking about the young girls, it's not fair for them to think that, if I'm in hair and makeup, I woke up like this with some crazy expensive dress and this and that. It's like my best outfits are my Zara's. Every day I had this great Zara suit on yesterday, and it's like it's it's really about how then do you kind of put it out there where people think, because again, in my head, you know, I'm still a girl from Kentucky. So I'm still Kid's sister.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this disconnect almost in probably what is like a sweet way to who I actually am. Now, obviously, I very much believe in who I am, but I also kind of want to be this like young girl that doesn't have some of the stress or, back then the health issues and just everything that is life.
So how do you recharge? I mean, is there, when you're not doing real estate, do you have sports that you like to do, or what's that downtime like?
Big in working out, boxing, a lot of Barry's boot camp, which helps me with the routine because it's in most of the cities that we travel in. And then, really love to travel. And I think, leading with Fred's example, there's a really great way to be able to travel and still work. One of our probably strongest things about our organization is taking our portfolios and projects on the road. Now, that's been amazing for especially Fred and I because we love to travel and we love to check out new resorts. We love to see new things. And of course, being from Kentucky, I feel like I'm a little behind on all of that. But it also is very advantageous to our sellers and our developers because we're constantly at the table with the right people and new places to be able to give access to their products. This old model of let's put it on the MLS or put it on Street Easy, and if you build it, they come. That's not the case, especially when you're in, both of us are spending more time in Miami, and there's so many developments. So how do we make it stand out? And that's what's been really great about, I think we do a great job of mixing kind of, I call it like blurred lines on balance. And, we'll go to Mexico City and take developments there, but we'll stay the weekend. And it also is really helpful that John and Fred and Susie have became 3 of my closest friends. So we're able to have like a little bit of fun with a lot of work.
So what is your biggest challenge facing you right now? And then also, do you think is facing the industry?
Ooh, oh boy.
I mean, I know it's a lot to unpack there.
I mean, I think there's a lot changing in the industry. I think we probably helped start this movement of, is the agent bigger than the brokerage? Is it about the agent or is it about the brokerage? And I think that's what's been interesting with us is instead of breaking off, which obviously, I mean, our organization from a business standpoint has always been stronger and more structured early on before anyone else. We could have started a shop immediately.
You could, but do you really want that back of house responsibility?
Definitely not me. But I think that more importantly, people aren't looking at it in the sense of like, yes, is the brokerage model a little bit broken? I think I could probably say that without getting my hand slapped too much. Absolutely. But also too, this whole going out on your own and it's your own thing, it's not a model that's been proven. It's still very young. So I think our approach of this hybrid makes a lot of sense. We, have an amazing partnership with Douglas Elliman. We've been there, 14, almost 15 years with the company. And we really do have a hybrid role where we're a little bit of a brokerage within the brokerage. We're very nimble. We very much have our own brand within the brand. We're, of course, these huge personalities at the end of the day. And it's really a partnership that works. There's a lot of things like, for example, like you said, do I really want to run a licensing department? Do I want to oversee HR? We already have like so many of the best in the business at Elliman. How am I going to go not only rebuild, recreate, and then pay the talent? People are like, oh, well, if I start my own thing, I keep everything. It's like, oh yeah, you also pay for everything.
Exactly.
More importantly. So I really think our model is going to end up being the one that's the right one for the long term.
So what about Elliman International?
Well, I think you got some coming soon.
Yeah. We just signed the partnership with Elliman, and just on Wednesday I filmed with Michael Leibowitz. And so he was so excited to talk about Element International. Is this something that, Eklund Gomes is going to be a part of too, or?
I don't think there's ever going to be anything that we don't have our hands in some shape or form. I think one of the great things, about one of the many great things about Michael is he really listens. I clicked immediately with him. I think I was one of his first phone calls as soon as they were legally able to fully tell us what was going on. And, I speak to him sometimes daily, multiple times a week. And I think there's some really exciting things coming up. I think the future of Element is very bright.
Endeavor sounds pretty amazing in Vegas.
I think there's going to be some fun stuff the end of October that, the company will roll out. And I think we're very proud to be involved with what is the future. And then, of course, as you can tell from, my loves, like who's also the next generation of the company.
Well, so this brings up a very interesting topic, because a week after Endeavor is the Real Deal South Florida Forum, where I was there last year. Realty Co. was a sponsor, and I was sitting there, and I was one of the ones, whoop, whoop, when Amir basically says to Michael Leibowitz, you know where I'm going with this. Why not Julia Spillman as the new CEO of Element versus you sell insurance? Why would they have you? And so everybody, I know you were like a little embarrassed, but
I was actually wearing a full red suit.
And you matched it.
Matched the whole thing. I didn't put blush on today, so that's great.
But let's just unpack that, because, I'm surprised that, one, they didn't choose you, but would you ever? Is that something that, you're still very young and you have a lot to achieve still with Eklund Gomes, but where is your future? Where do you see yourself in 10, 15 years? Where do you want to be?
And that's another thing I really love about Michael. We've actually spent a lot of time on that. I really think it's exciting for me to work with Michael, because there's a lot of things I know about this business. And obviously, I feel like my track records demonstrates that I really understand the business. I understand the agents. I understand the structure, the strategy, but I don't understand yet how to run a publicly traded company. And I think sometimes us, and I call it in our narcissistic real deal brains, we as agents are kind of consumed about like our deals are the thing that keeps these brokerages going. And yes, that helps, but a successful brokerage has so many different ancillary parts of it that really drive what is ultimately the share price. And I think sometimes we think that it's just us and, we did a 432 Park deal and the whole company should, kiss our feet. And it's like, that's not really how a large company works. And I think what's really exciting, especially for me, is to learn from Michael how these bigger companies work. Because obviously he has yes, it was in insurance, but he has a tremendous track record of success.
Right.
And I'm really excited to learn more about how a publicly traded company really works behind the scenes. Now, I don't really know what my future is, because it is crazy to think that I still have a really long runway on it, which is really exciting. But, it was interesting. He and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and he was just like, I've got some personal changes happening and some things going on. And he was just like, you have all these opportunities and you just have to lean in, and instead of being nervous about it, receive it. And it was kind of exactly what I needed to hear, because I think sometimes when you have so many options that, like, where do you want to live? What do you want to do with this? What is the future of Eklund Gomes? What is mine? And I think sometimes it becomes overwhelming. And because I am a bit more corporate and structured, I can kind of get into like, well, this is this. And it's like, it's kind of like, no. Just kind of like lean into it and embrace it. And most importantly, stick with what has worked for the last 15 years in this business for me, curiosity. So now my curiosity is, what's Michael doing to drive the stock price up? What is Michael doing to restructure this business? And I'm very fortunate to have access to him And I think we make a good little duo in the sense of I have all the intel of how it works on this side. And again, we have made a lot of mistakes and I'm happy to share those. And he has a whole other set of skill sets that I would like to really learn and lean into. So I think hopefully, it's John and Fred and, my father would say, it's kind of like the sky's the limit. So
great. So
let's see.
how does that compare then to looking at the industry as a whole, right? It's not just a silo of Douglas Elliman, right? You have to look at you as a real estate broker agent.
Yeah.
And so how do you see yourself as far as you're in so many different markets transacting and being an agent? Like how has the NAR settlement affected you? But then also how are you looking to the future? As a founding member of the American Association of Real Estate Associates and Realtico just, if you read in Inman last week, we're the official partner and Briggs LL is on the board. How does that play into your future? Or have you thought about that at all?
And obviously because of all the settlements and stuff, I'm pretty limited to what I can say. But again, I think any limitation is really kind of just more like a mindset thing. It's if you look at all these industries, they all have regulations, they've all had lawsuits, they've all gone through many different ways their days of reckoning. So for us, I think the fact that we're always like so shocked when something happens, again, we're in our narcissistic real deal bubble and we're not really thinking about, these are just how industries happen. And of course, as the spotlight of, the growth of, think about it. When you and I came out of college, nobody was like, I want to be a real estate agent. Right. So,
not at all.
No one.
No. Right.
But, I'm so proud of how many, Ivy Leaguers I have. And the rest
it's changed so much.
Now, I'm like, wow. But I think that things are changing. And I think, again, we have to be nimble. We have to be quick on our feet. And you always have to have, I think my biggest fear being in this role is making sure I still have like my finger on the pulse because all the, I haven't done, like a true showing in probably 8-9 years, but I still make sure I'm super up to speed with all the forms, the language, every piece of it.
But you're still making the transactions happen.
Yes.
You're still an architect of so many deals.
But I think that you just have to stay in the mix and you have to stay relevant. And kind of like you said before, you have to just keep moving forward. So if you look at these things and think of them as setbacks or barriers, you're thinking of it wrong.
Right.
You have to figure out, this is how I have to move forward. These are the legal sets of it and keep moving forward. There's no other options. And the people that are going to get in their heads and they're going to say, well, I can't flourish in this business because XYZ, they're not made for the next generation of success here.
Or looking at, because everything is going to change as we're seeing with AI. And this is why we're sitting here today, is because I realized, I have this opportunity. Let's run with it. Yeah. And it's funny how there's always opportunities every day.
Every day.
And then which ones are you going to take? Which ones are you going to push away? And I'm just grateful for this voice and for being able to now support and empower teams and brokerages through Realtico. And how I always like to end podcasts are, if you could give your young agent self a piece of advice, not somebody young today, because it's very different, but you yourself, your young agent self, a piece of advice, Julia, what would that be?
That's actually a good one. Oh my gosh. I should have stepped on the napkins for this. No, I think the curiosity thing.
You've talked about mindset, and
number one thing is you never know what's on the other side of the door. And I think the second that you stop manifesting, you stop being curious, is just where you flatline.
So would you say then your advice would be to just take the risk?
Yeah, always take the risk. Again, I didn't make $1 from support. Well, I think I got like 400. So I sold out the building 3 times over. I made $400 and I got the audition of a lifetime.
Right.
And now I get to sit in this amazing chair and work with the top brokers and the top partners it's, again, I would have been happy to have paid for that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. So I always like to end with positive quotes. Are there any positive quotes that are important to you?
Oof. I'm not a big quote person. John Gulps
Okay.
is, but I really love that one in the sense of like, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. I think there's so many things in this business that we want to try to like twist and make different. And sometimes it's just really face value, and I think the number one thing is go with your gut in this business.
That's great. So my first Agent Brew executive sessions was with Bess Friedman from Brown Harris Stevens. And so it's just incredible. And so we happen to share a love for the Knowledge Project, which is a podcast by Shane Parrish. And so I had listened to one of his recent episodes about Estee Lauder, who from New Jersey. Here's a woman that changed an entire industry for over 100 years, and she turned it on its head and like became this incredible entrepreneur. And so as I always go through different quotes in that, this is one that I picked out for you because I just thought that, this is, I didn't get here by wishing for it or hoping for it, but by working for it. Again, I didn't get here by wishing for it or for hoping for it, but by working for it. And that's Estee Lauder.
I love that. Thank you. I'm gonna actually write that one down. No, it's very true. I always say, or it's always gonna be someone smarter, prettier, faster, smart, all the things, but it's gonna be very, very hard to outwork the Eklund Gomes team.
Well, Julia, it's such an honor to have you here as our first ever in-person guest for Agent Brew. But more importantly, I appreciate your friendship. And you have supported me through and through. And I really appreciate that. And thank you to our listeners and viewers for listening to this Agent Brew Executive Sessions with Julia Spillman, of the CEO of the Eklund Gomes Team of Douglas Elliman Real Estate. I'm your host, Eric Zollinger of Realty Co., reminding you it's a great day for real estate. The Agent Brew podcast is brought to you by Realty Co. Realty Co. is your partner in real estate, bringing you game-changing benefits and services to empower your business. Visit realtyco.com for more information.